AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Hamid Benbrahim. Hamid is the head of data and AI for Thomas. Hamid, welcome to the show.
Thank you, JP.
Hamid, let's start with a little bit of background of yourself, talking through how you first got involved in technology, some of the roles you've held along the way, taking us up to your current position with Thomas.
I started in big data a long time ago, before it was called big data. I was doing my PhD in machine learning. Actually, I was building a biped robot that learned how to walk by itself. And that was in the 90s, was before cloud computing, before Wi-Fi, before lots of the technology that make big data useful today or feasible. So, but that was way ahead of its time, and the marketplace was not ready for AI, at least at the generic level. I was working in telecom at that time. I was mostly involved with the operations side of the telecom business. And then a little before the financial crisis, I moved to financial services, where I joined Fidelity Investments to start a new center for complexity research, basically understanding the complexity of the financial markets. And that was the time when we started looking at what's happening in the marketplace, and we noticed that things were not following the pattern that people were used to. So we decided to look at the data and see what it is telling us. And we started analyzing big amounts of data about the financial markets, and we realized that our theories, how the market worked, were obsolete, and the market has changed, which we kind of knew that, but it changed a lot. So we started using data science to understand the markets, come up with better investment strategies, risk management. So that was probably the first time where I started seeing really big use cases for the data, and the technology was getting powerful enough to be able to analyze big amounts of data. I moved on to TD Ameritrade after that to be a chief data scientist, following the same thing, basically using data to inform investment strategies to help our traders make better investments, and also help our business make better decisions based on the data that is collected either from our clients or acquired from third parties. The interesting thing about data is we found many counterintuitive things in the data that nobody thought about. While intuition is incredibly valuable at making business decisions, however, there are many areas where we have blind spots or things we never thought about. And that's where we found that using data to make decisions rather than rely solely on subject matter expertise or intuition was a good way of supplementing these human capabilities, but with machine intelligence, so that we get a full view of actually what is happening. And I found this amazing opportunity with Thomas. I had never heard of Thomas, like many people probably have not. It is actually a fascinating company. Thomas started by publishing this book called the Thomas Register that had a listing of all suppliers in the US and Canada. And at some points, there were parts of the other books that covered other parts of the world. Now, if you are a design engineer or a procurement manager at any manufacturing company, you needed to have those books, because that's how you found the suppliers. That was the only way to find them at that time. Thomas was so central and critical to the supply chain that during World War II, when the government was imposing quotas on the use of fuel and paper, basically rationing fuel and paper, the manufacturing industry lobbied the government to give Thomas an exemption because those books were critical to the supply chain.
Wow.
Fast forward, Thomas now is 100% online. We have over 500,000 suppliers on our platform, and we have every product category you can think of in the manufacturing space, over 70,000 product categories. And also these suppliers are classified by all kinds of criteria, certifications and so forth. People come to Thomas to find a supplier. If you are a big manufacturer, you cannot find the parts on the shelf in many cases. Many of the parts that are required for manufacturing space cannot be found on the shelf. So you have to find a supplier that will work with you for a number of years. And it's very important to choose the right supplier. They have to fit technical certifications like the ISO standards. And many times they have also to fit socioeconomic certifications, like are they a minority-owned business and so forth.
So there's really nothing else like comparable to Thomas in the marketplace, both from a retail consumer or in manufacturing space. It really dominates being a central location for all manufacturing related supply chain information.
Well, that was the thought that I had. And then I was thinking maybe it was just my ignorance of what else is out there. And the more research we did, the more we got convinced that we were the only game in town, at least at the broad level. I mean, there are some very specific areas where there are companies that do something similar to us, but at the broad level, we're the only ones. And the validation came lately during this COVID-19 crisis, where a number of government organizations and a number of big companies started reaching out to us saying, we need help with the supply chain, we need help finding parts for manufacturing of ventilators and so forth. And they would come back to us and say, we looked everywhere and you guys are the only ones who have the data. You guys are the only ones who have the coverage that's required to do this. So it was a nice validation of what we thought all along. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the background and really interesting to understand who Thomas are. You and I have spoken previously and it's very exciting what you've been tasked with having joined. So could you give us some additional insight of what your role involves as the head of data and AI, and more importantly, the project that you've been asked to work on?
So I had the privilege to join Thomas about 6 months ago, and I was asked to head the data organization, basically reorganizing our data, setting up the right systems and processes to manage our data, make it available to different parts of the business, enable data and analytics, business intelligence, and all the typical functions that like a chief data officer would be doing in a company. So that was one part of my role. The other part was to launch a new business unit that commercializes our data into particularly the financial space. One of the interesting things, and having come from my background from a financial industry, fundamental investors have always been the core of investment throughout history. I mean, some people will debate that, but ultimately it always comes down to the fundamentals of the economy. So if you think about legendary investors like Peter Lynch, for instance, he would walk down the streets of Boston to see which businesses were doing well, and then he would call his broker and buy or sell the stock. Today, you cannot have people walking down the streets because the world changed a lot. However, with the data we have at Thomas, we know what's happening in the financial sector. Every dollar that is spent in the economy today is directly or indirectly related to something that is built, packaged, labeled, or shipped by one of our suppliers. So we see in our data what is happening in the economy. So aggregating our data, it's like taking hundreds of thousands of Peter Lynch's and putting them together in one data set, which is a fantastic product for the financial industry. And recently, we launched a new index called the Thomas Manufacturing Index to do exactly that, to aggregate all of this data and represent it as an index. We were pleasantly surprised, although we had a hunch, that it would follow the market very well, and indeed it does. But most recently, since December, it has been leading the S&P 500 by over 2 months, which is a fantastic unheard of thing in the financial space.
Very interesting work, Hamid, and something not many people would be familiar with if they were not already connected with Thomas in some way. Before talking about some of the details of the project, I'd love to get your perspective on the change in industry, because your background is quite interesting, given former chief data scientist at TD Ameritrade. So what has the transition been like for you, going from, hardcore financial institution to now working with manufacturing supply data?
The transition actually has been very seamless, in the sense that I'm still doing the same things I was doing when I was in the financial industry. Basically, I was looking at data to inform investment strategies. And when I was working in the financial industry, the data that was available to me was market data and other data sources we would acquire from third parties. But I never had a data that had the depth that we have here at Thomas. So I'm doing basically the same thing I was doing at TD Ameritrade or at Fidelity Investments, except I am doing it with much more substantial data, much more significant data. And also I'm embedded within a company that has tremendous subject matter expertise. So we could think of it as almost like a specialization in the industrial production space from a financial point of view. But again, because of my background in technology, in telecom and so forth, having the data organization responsibility on top of that was also a natural extension.
I'd love to speak a little bit about the unique challenges that you face while working with data sets within manufacturing. You mentioned previously that manufacturing as an industry is one of the last major global industries to fully embrace digitization. So could you give us some insight into what that's been like for you, coming from fintech, which is obviously hugely reliant on digital metrics, to now manufacturing, which is somewhat behind, and you're part of that push to bring it forward to modern times?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure I would term the manufacturing industry as being behind, but I would call it very heterogeneous. When we think about the 500,000 plus suppliers we have, they're all over the map in terms of size, in terms of specialization, and in terms of sophistication when it comes down to adoption of technology and data. Some of our clients are super sophisticated, for example, 3D printing companies and so forth, in terms of using the data, using technology for all kinds of purposes. However, on the other hand, we have also other companies who barely have a computer, for example, and they're very good. They're critical to the supply chain. They're the best at what they're doing, but they probably never had time to get into the data bandwagon. Now, you have to keep in mind that data and technology, they lack industry, in a sense that they look cool, they look great, they have lots of promise, but unless you find the real use case for them, it becomes more distraction than anything else. And that's true for the internet. When it first started, it did not produce value for the companies right away. And the same thing for data. A few years ago, many companies invested a lot in data, but had nothing to show for it. Now we are getting to a point where there are use cases for the data. So there are applications, and also there are capabilities to collect the data, analyze it, and then put it to use for decision making. So these manufacturers who, let's say, they never used data before, now they're generating data through their transactions with us or with their partners, and these data they are generating say a lot about what is happening in their own business, what is happening with their clients, and what is happening in the industry overall. Now, analyzing these data allows us to generate insights that can help them better understand their business, better understand their customers, and make informed decisions that are informed by the data, as well as by their own subject matter expertise, experience, and intuition.
I see. Thank you for that. So you joined Thomas last year with a big project to work on. What does the end goal look like, and what are you most excited about on this journey over the coming years to build out this fully functioning data practice?
Oh, I'm super excited. This is like a whole new universe for me. I mean, I go on visits to visit some of our suppliers, go to their factories and see real stuff being built. Coming from the financial industry, for a while, you deal with numbers. You never see anything actually being built. You see prices going up and down, but when you see something actually being built, metal being cut and melted and so forth, it's incredibly rewarding and satisfying. So that's just from personal psychological point of view. But the real exciting thing for me is these suppliers are the backbone of the US economy. And they work very hard. They're very innovative. They create all kinds of products and services that make our lives much easier and much better. And that sector is super healthy. Even with the crisis today, we have seen so many of them step up to produce masks, ventilators, and so forth, which is a fantastic way of seeing real economic activity firsthand. So that's probably the most rewarding thing that excites me with Thomas, and the fact that through that we generate data that is meaningful because it is first-party data. We get it right away from things being produced, which is a fantastic. It's like basically getting the data at the source.
Amazing. So you obviously came into this role not with a background in manufacturing, but clearly a lot of experience that you've built up over many years. As you grow out your data and AI practice, you're not going to have a huge pool of candidates to select from that have been working on this exact project for many years. So as you build out the team, what are the fundamental skill sets and abilities that you're looking for in a group in order to succeed in this particular role?
So for like many times people ask me, what is a data scientist? Is it somebody who knows Python or statistics? My answer is anybody can be a data scientist as long as they have a number of qualities. One of them is curiosity. Whenever curiosity means whenever you see something interesting, it piques your interest and you start asking the right question. The other one is the ability to analyze data to mine for insights that you can tie directly to your business, to what's happening in your business or to the goals that you're to achieve. And that requires a good understanding of how systems work. I'm not talking about technology systems, I'm talking about systems in general, whether it's the corporation that you're working at or the market you're involved with. So understanding who your customers are, what your products are, and how does that relate to the product, to the data that you are analyzing, is actually key to being a good data scientist. Many times, data scientists can be super talented in terms of writing algorithms, analyzing the data, but if they cannot relate it to the subject matter expertise, the problems that the business is trying to solve, they may end up analyzing the wrong data or generating the wrong conclusions. So these are some of the very important qualities that teams have to have overall.
Excellent, thank you for that. And as the team grows and builds, where do you see it getting to, if you visualize a few years down the line? Because obviously you're brought in to lead the whole practice and you build it out over time. Where are we at currently, and where could it get to as you guys continue to evolve?
Size-wise, definitely we don't want to build a large organization unless it makes sense. That we can achieve a great deal by through partnerships, through crowdsourcing, through a number of innovative ways of getting things done. So definitely we want to grow our teams, but we have to grow them in a responsible way and efficient way and so forth.
Before you and I spoke previously, I was not familiar with Thomas, and when you told me about the impact that they have on the industry and then the project that you are working on, it sounded incredibly exciting. But equally, it's hard to fully visualize the true impact and the various use cases that these data sets could have. Could you give us some insight or advice on the potential use of the various data sets so that we can further visualize the scale of what you're working on?
So probably one of the biggest impacts we think our data will have is on investing, fundamental investing. The investing community has been starved for fundamental data at scale. There are lots of companies who do a great job at collecting fundamental economic data, but they do it mostly manually, and that those methods cannot scale and cannot work for large financial institutions. At Thomas, our data shows exactly what is happening in the economy at a very large scale. We have hundreds of thousands of transactions that show true intent and true economic activity. And by aggregating them, then we have a real-time pulse on the economy, generating indices that can tell us exactly what the manufacturing sector is doing. And we get it real time. We don't have to wait for a month, for example, to get economists to agree on what's happening. We see it happening every day in front of our eyes. I cannot think of a single opportunity like this one for investors and economists to get a real pulse on the economy.
Wow, really interesting to hear about what's possible with the use of manufacturing data and how it can drive investment strategy and have a massive impact on business decisions. So I think it's great. Looking forward to hearing what you guys can accomplish and watch with great interest. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me. This was fun to chat with you.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. For more information, contact mark@alldus.com. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.